information section with uh, with Sama Simone and Chipwa Mukono. Um, Basically, we met Sama during the SLC Society Leadership Conference in Vienna, and where he was awarded for his remarkable work with girl power and also with the contribution to the CFA Society and the institute as a whole. I think we ended up connecting with them, and we realized that they have in stock a lot to offer the CFA Society in Ghana in terms of growth, in terms of uh, uh, opportunities within that can be harnessed within the CFA Society network. Um, so we engage with them subsequently to really figure out how we can really encourage or boost the morale of the CFA Society candidates in Ghana, so that we can have a more buoyant and also vibrant CFA society. In fact, he has a track record in helping other societies build up, and also is very renowned and notable in the CFA society network. So we decided to come up with this pre-exam information section because there seems to be a lot going out there, especially in our part of the world, and in Ghana as a whole, where we can kind of be facing a lot of economic hurdles to cross, which sometimes, if not taken care, might make the CFA really a no-go area because of the cost involved in registering for the exam. I mean, I experienced it when the time when I was going for the level 100, the fees started skyrocketing because the exchange rate started dropping. This year, we've seen almost close to 60% depreciation rate, which would put you into question as to even if it is worth it registering for the CFA exams as against other exams. What are the opportunities involved? Will you be able to recuperate your money back? These are questions that flew through my mind at the time when I was faced with a similar economic vicissitude as we face this in our recent times. I wasn't lucky. I had to go and resort to online to really encourage myself to keep on doing the CFA. So I became a CFA charter. So we thought it as much. We discussed with Sama and then and Blue Ocean's Technology to come in and aid us in providing a pre-exam information section. One to encourage candidates that whatever be it, they should see through to the end of completing the CFA program, and that it presents a lot of opportunities, not only in the local community, but in a global network, which you can easily leverage on and become a global candidate and be as competitive as students who have been trained in an international standard. So we decided to today have an information session that will be jointly hosted by Blue Ocean Technology. The CEO of Blue Ocean Technology is Sama Samo, and his co-host was Chipwa Mukono, to provide you with the information and the reason to keep on doing the CFA, with the objective of eventually becoming a CFA charter holder, and the opportunities it will present to you. So I present to you Sama and Chipwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. My name is Samir Somal, and greetings, students, young professionals, and CFA candidates of the CFA Society of Ghana. It really is an honor to be here. As mentioned, I had the distinguished opportunity to meet some of your society leaders at the conference in Vienna, and today's session really is all about you. Chipwa and I, as leaders at Girl Power Talk, we genuinely care about empowering the next generation of CFA charter holders, and we know what it takes to get through the exam. We personally advised young people all over the world through videos, through sessions, through mentoring. There have been many people that I personally have helped who have struggled with some of the exams, get through them on their third, fourth, fifth attempt. So today is all about you and providing you context and a framework so that all of you can make more informed decisions and hopefully give it your best attempt on this exam coming up and in future and subsequent exams as well. I've been incredibly fortunate to be part of the CFA global community for the last 10 plus years, probably the last closer to 15 years now. And, my journey as a CFA charter holder hasn't been a typical one. I have spent a lot of time involved with CFA Institute, volunteering, consulting with the Institute, speaking at societies all over the world. I've authored articles, actually a recent one with Chipwa as well, that I think some of your society leaders had seen, on why Africa is poised for impact investing. I've spoken at probably 40 plus CFA societies globally. And through all of that and graded exams for 10 years in a row, I've made incredible friends, and I've met lifelong friends, I've met colleagues, I've met business partners, and I've also met new clients. And so the CFA is something that takes an incredible amount of work, but anything worth something in life usually does take a lot of work. And so it's a gateway, what I always kind of equate to, like, in some ways, a golden ticket to opportunities, to skills, and to hopefully achieving all your full potential. And so today, I know we have some prepared comments. And other than that, we're also going to keep it open for all the questions and guidance. And before I turn it to Chipwa to introduce herself, I'll say that, today isn't a transactional session. We know that the Ghana Society is relatively new. We know there is a intelligent, motivated, and vibrant youth population in Ghana. And the CFA is an outlet for many of you to be able to achieve in finance and to move forward. And so we anticipate this being the first of many sessions. I know we have the exam coming up in roughly a month, but we also know that we can be a big asset to helping you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months before the exam. So we openly seek to be a true friend of the CFA Society of Ghana and all of you as well. And this is what today's all about. Chipwa, over to you.
Thank you, Samir. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well and that your day has been going incredibly so far. My name is Chipwa Mukono, and I direct the finance and investments team at Girl Power Talk. And the CFA program for me really came into play when I was trying to pivot my career. So my background was not in finance, but this program allowed me to end up in the space that I find myself in. And I hope through what I share in this conversation we're going to have today, I would maybe encourage someone who's taking a non-conventional path to stick with it, and maybe also inspire fellow Africans. I'm from Zimbabwe. Maybe inspire fellow Africans to stick with it even when things get difficult, because they do get difficult in a way that's slightly different and unique to our circumstances, particularly on the African continent. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me, with us. And I truly hope we have a back and forth discussion and learn a lot from each other and hopefully create the next group cohort of global charter holders. Thank you. Back to you, Samir.
Thank you. I don't know who's going to play our deck, if that's going to be the Ghana team or if that's going to be you, but maybe we can get started with that. And just to comment, I'm glad that people are dropping messages, and including Clement, about finding a study partner. I think we're here to encourage that as well. And also, I believe Eunice had said that, hey, are there any exemptions? And Eunice, I think what makes the CFA program special and unique is that it doesn't matter if, for instance, I took the exams in the United States, because that's where I live about half of the year. I'm currently, though, with Chipwa in our Girl Power Talk offices in India. But it doesn't matter whether it was in Zimbabwe, whether it was in Ghana, whether it was in the United States. We all took the same exams, and that's where there is a baseline and benchmark of credibility and relatability. And so I think that that is important to note, that there's no kind of saying, hey, you know, I've got a degree. Even if someone has a PhD in finance, they still have to go through all the exams. So there's no shortcuts to getting through the CFA program, which has been something that's been consistent. So we are here to talk about, so today we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for the exam, exam day, taking the exam, after the exam, and of course, making the most of your, of course, you know, so we're here to answer all your questions. The exam, they have prepared windows, Teresa, in terms of the exam. I think Chipwa can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the level 1 exam, I think, is offered 4 times a year. The level 2 exam twice a year. I think the level 3 exam once or twice a year. And so they have set windows. And the reason for doing that is that they have to grade. There's not a rolling grading. They grade the exams. They grade the exams as a cohort, as a group, because they do what's called a curved exam. So they decide, hey, based upon everyone that took the level 1 exam, the level 2 exam, the level 3 exam, what is the minimum passing score based on the thousands of people that took it? So they have set timings that they offer it, so that there's a benchmark to all the people that take the May exam, for instance. They don't want to make it so that it's too easy, or they don't want to make it so it's too hard. They want to stay kind of within the basic parameters. And then also everyone that took the same exam, they kind of have to look at and evaluate. Okay. So I hope that answered your question. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Thank you, Samir. Sorry for that interruption. I was just going to share, I saw someone in the chat group saying they're writing in August. Level 1, there will be a requirement to schedule your exam. Since COVID came around and they've maintained this after COVID, people write in small batches on different days. I guess it also helps because we now do computer-based testing. So you will have to schedule your exam before a particular deadline in order to get a date for you to write your exam. And then with changes and deferrals, these don't happen as much anymore. But occasionally you will find that you need to change your exam, or the CFA Society needs to change the exam taking cycle in your country. This will be communicated via Prometric, which is where you would register for the date you want to write your exam. In the case where it's you who wants to make the change, there is a fee of $250, which applies to doing deferral of the exams. And that's it on changes and deferrals. Then for useful sites for preparation, I'm sure many of you have come across these before. This is just a quick list we put together for you. We will share this with CFA Society Ghana so that they can pass it on to you as well if there are any links that you would like to pay attention to or have access to. And then if you are thinking of asking a prep provider to help you out with your exam, there are some questions that you can ask to make sure you do not get scammed, because it is a business and it is lucrative to be a prep provider. So just to be careful and make sure you get the right and the best thing for yourself, you need to find out if they're a prep provider. And if they say they are, the CFA Institute website will have them listed as an official prep provider. If they use the CFA logo, they are probably lying that they are an accredited provider, because they are not allowed to use the CFA logo on their websites. If they mention an average pass rate, they are also probably not the right provider to go with, because they're not allowed to mention an average pass rate. to avoid cherry picking candidates. They should all have biographies of their trainers, and they should mention if they cover all exam topics, and you can check this by cross-referencing with the course content. And a question which is good to ask is if the materials have been updated since the last curriculum year, and especially with all the changes happening now with CFA incorporating things like AI into their curriculum to stay current. This is something that's very important to ask. And number of questions they have, number of mock exams they take, and how responsive they are to questions you may have. You will find that some providers who are not approved by the CFA Institute will not be as responsive to answering your questions. Some will, but not all. So just to be careful that you get what you pay for. It's worth asking if they will be responsive to questions you have. And it's advisable to find an prep provider who can help you focus on your weakness. And this is done in different ways through different online test-taking platforms where you can take tests and get areas where you need to improve highlighted to you. And then one really big one is if they say it will take you less than 300 hours to pass the exam, that's the point of caution, because CFA Institute has been, talking to people back and forth for years, past test takers, past charter holders, and on average, 300 hours was the minimum that people mentioned was about the right amount of time to pass the exam. Samir?
Yes, thank you. I also just want to comment, and I think that, there's always a mindset going into the CFA exam. And one of the reasons why Chipwa and I are here is because we really are here to help you get through the exam and gain confidence and know that, hey, anyone out there who's taken these exams, they've all had to go through the same thing, and you actually can do it. And there is, and we can cover a little bit of this today, depending upon where all of you are at. But the reality of it is with these exams is that you have to study smart, right? I'm sure some of you have heard that, it's important to, work smart, not work hard. I always disagree with that and say that I think it's really important to work both hard and smart. And in preparing for the exam, we also can provide some brief comments about ways that you can be most effective in your study practices, and we can certainly share some of the ways that helped us. But I just want to briefly mention, so Jerry had asked about, hey, my international passport. Jerry, that's a question probably for the Institute. What I would say is that given that the passport office takes some time, is bring your old passport, unless you sent that in, bring your ID, bring a copy of your application. You likely had submitted an application, but I would actually reach out to CFA Institute. They are pretty responsive, and I know the society has relations there, but I would formally find out about that, because I'm sure that there have been situations where people have been in process on that. So yeah, that's something that I would consider reaching out to the Institute. But I would think that given that you are doing your best to get the passport, there should be an exception made, Jerry. So I hope that's the case.
May I, Samir?
Sure.
Cool. So now that we have computer-based testing for level 1, not much changes. It's still multiple choice. You choose the one correct answer. Level 2 and 3 format may change depending on the size of your screen, depending on which level you're writing. So for level 2, it's again multiple choice, except your questions are not, it's not certain questions in the morning session and certain questions in the afternoon session. They are mixed up. And then level 3 is where most people, including myself before I took it, are a bit afraid, for lack of a better word, to take the exam. One reason being the short answer style that level 3 has. So for those with level 1, 2, and 3, if you have a large screen on the day of your test, this is what your screen will look like. Your question will open on the left with your answers on the right. And if you have a smaller screen, your questions will open on top of your answer section, and then you can go back to your answer section to provide your answer. Structure for level 1, 180 questions, 90 seconds per question is the advised time, which is pretty fast. So you need to know your content really well. And then the 2 sessions cover specific topics, which makes it easier to keep certain topics top of mind when you go in to write a particular session. So that's great. And then level 2 has 88 multiple choice questions, 4 hours, 24 minutes, and an optional break in between. And then for level 3, it's the essay format. And the time is not a whole lot of time. There is no expectation to write in 4 sentences. There is no expectation to show you're working. If you can write your answer on the piece of paper on the side and work it out, and then just put what's needed in the answer section of the computer-based testing environment, that would actually be great for saving you time and allowing you to get through it quickly. So here we have some quick examples of what's expected in the level 3 exam. So for instance, with example 1, you're asked to determine which bond meets the advisor's objective and to justify your response. So you would have to give 2 answers, one which determines the best bond, and the second one justifying why your response is the response you're going with. Another case of example level 3 questions, you would be asked to determine the most appropriate item. In this case, it's an index, and then explain why the other 2 options are incorrect. For this, you would be required to give 3 answers, which is the appropriate index chosen in this case, and a reason for each of the other 2 which are not correct, and why you think they're not correct. And then another type of question you would get is to discuss. So in this example, we have discuss one weakness in the risk management process for company A and B. So each discussion would have to be a separate paragraph, and you have a discussion for each of the companies spoken about. And then level 3 has an item set format where you get something of a story format information, a vignette. And from that, 4 questions would come, and each question is going to have 3 points. So in the examples mentioned before, where you had to give a selection and then 2 reasons, the selection would be a point, the first reason would be another point, the second reason would be another point. So I found when I was taking the level 3 exam, it was very helpful to know your information as specifically as you can, to stop the urge to want to write a lot of words. And it helps you get straight to the point because you really do not have a lot of time. Bullet points are the best. And because you no longer have the option to show you're working, really, they changed it. It's further down in the presentation. If you can get to the point of writing your answer quickly, that would be best. If they ask you to justify your answer, then just highlight, this is why, this is my answer, and then highlight as many points as are required by the question. And then for questions that require a numerical answer, you can get an essay box sometimes. Sometimes you'll only get a box which only allows you to enter numbers. So depending on the box, that will let you know what you can and cannot do for that answer. And then there are changes to the computer-based exam for level 3. And these came into effect in February 2023. The highlighting function is now available within the vignette, so you can highlight certain areas of your questions. There used to be a math editor function where you could write math equations and lay them out properly, but that caused a lot of confusion and that was removed. So the essay text box will accept typed answers and numbers. And if you have a numerical answer in the essay text box, it will still count for marks. So you don't have to panic and worry about that one. And again, to reiterate, formulas and explanations are not required. For the morning and afternoon sections, it's a mixture of both essay and multiple choice. And you would have 11 essay sets and 11 sets of the MCQ, multiple choice. And just to share something that happened to me, maybe it might help someone, because the computer-based test is now on a computer, it will log you out when your time runs out. So just a heads up for those who are writing soon, not to panic. Your screen will go blank when the time is up. So just be prepared for that to happen as you take the test. Quite frightening, but yeah, just a heads up. I wish someone had told me. Over to you, Samir.
Yeah, and I think that when you're taking the exam, many times people do run out of time. And so there is like this big palette of material that you have to know for each exam. And the reality is that pretty much every candidate is not going to know all of it. So I always found one of the best test taking strategies is that when you're really stuck on something, you reach a question you don't know, you just have no idea, you don't understand this. I typically move past those questions and either, and come back to them later and answer all the things that you know, because one of the things you don't want is you don't want to run out of time and then you never got to all the questions, and some of those questions you didn't get to, you could have answered pretty quickly and gotten them right. So I've always found that skipping the difficult questions is a better strategy, and coming back to those later on if you get time, but making sure the things that you know well and you studied are answered it is a strategy. And I remember taking the CFA exams. There were one or two of the exams. I remember I ran out of a little bit of time, or I didn't get a chance to finish some of the questions, and that's a common practice. So doesn't mean you're not going to pass if you skip a few, but I think you want to get the ones right that you definitely know about.
Awesome. Samir, could you please take us through the benefits of participating in what the local CFA society and community has going on from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it's hard being a young person trying to find opportunities where you can gain experience, where you can find mentorship, where you can find purpose, where you can create opportunities. But the CFA society and your local community is an outlet for that, because the CFA community is a global one. There's, I think, 150 plus societies or candidate and member groups around the world. There are so many opportunities to actually get involved locally with your society. And for instance, I learned that you could become a grader of CFA exams through my local society and through a friend. And some of you might be thinking, Samir, why would you ever want to grade CFA exams? Well, it used to be one of the best kept secrets at CFA Institute, where they brought, 500 to 800 charter holders from all over the world to Charlottesville to actually grade the exams. And it's where I've, made some incredible friendships. I also think that when you think about being able to apply what you've learned when you've studied, when you think about being able to find that next job, when you think about being able to get advice, when you think about being able to make a new friend, joining your local CFA society in your community is an incredible gateway for being able to meet new people. Typically, without the society, it'd be very hard for you to maybe interact with someone like Nana, to interact with somebody like Emmanuel. But through the society, you're able to help and contribute. And life very much works in what you give and put in is you receive what you put into things, be it relationships, be it communities. So through the society, you can gain opportunities to write, you can gain opportunities to learn, to actually understand, hey, what is it from an investment perspective that makes Ghana unique or makes Africa unique? How are people approaching institutional investing or portfolio management? All these things stem from getting involved. And so you don't have to necessarily be a CFA charter holder in order to actually get involved and to be able to assume responsibilities. And I think it's one of the most overlooked opportunities. And as an entrepreneur, as somebody who has built 2 organizations in Blue Ocean Global Technology and Girl Power Talk, I can't imagine having done that without some of the friends and opportunities that I was afforded by going and actually joining the local community. And when, just because you're volunteering, it doesn't mean that can't turn into a real opportunity. So I am as big of an advocate, and I would say that because your society is newer, the Ghana society, that's an even bigger opportunity for you to assume responsibility and to really help and contribute and make it better. And I know that the society would love your help, but we certainly can talk more about that. But hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Samir. Certainly helpful. I see your question, Jerry, asking, are we going to be provided with plain sheets for calculation? You will be provided with, apologies for that. You will be provided with plain sheets for calculation. However, please don't forget to put the answer in the computer-based environment, but you will be given a place to do your scrap work on the side. And with that, Samir, you did cover grading and results, unless you would like to add further comments.
Yeah, I would say that, there's a saying, what do they call the person that graduates last in medical school? They call them doctor. So I know people that are incredibly brilliant that didn't necessarily get through the exams. And so don't be discouraged. I think that if you didn't get through an exam in the past, or if you give it your best for this May exam and it doesn't work out, I think that you got to go back to the drawing board, come up with a better study plan to be more effective and efficient with your time. For instance, something as simple as creating audio recordings of the material that you don't know, and then listening to them, when you're laying on your bed, when you're working out, when you're taking a walk, that can be an easy way to learn some of the material. So I know that, the exams are graded on a curve and results can be nerve-wracking, and I know through firsthand experience with people who haven't necessarily gotten through all of them, how devastating it can be. But we are here, the society, Chipwa, and Samir, we're definitely here to be your friends and mentors to help you get through. And today's just the beginning of that journey. And we certainly can provide, many more, practical tips and advice. But I hope that is helpful, and we'll, continue to keep the door open on questions and comments.
Thank you, Samir. And that brings us to the end of our written presentation. We do still have questions coming in.
Yeah, all your questions are welcome about studying, about the exams, about our journeys. We know that the candidates and people taking the exams are the lifeline and the foundation of the future of Ghana from a finance standpoint. And this session is all about you. I think it's oftentimes rare that, you have something where it's only for your benefit. This is definitely that. So open door on any questions that you might have. And I can, of course, share some of the ones that I commonly get, but we're here to answer anything. And look, I know that there were some comments about reliable test providers, and there are and anything's the bell curve. There's good people, there's maybe some people in the middle, there's sometimes people on the other end. So I think that is one of the challenges, is being able to find the right people. But I would also say that, for instance, someone like myself, I didn't even use a study provider. I researched how to take the exams. I used some proven study techniques. I focused on the framework and guideline material. Just to answer, I think it's Kudjo's question about the structure of the level 1 exam. I believe there's a morning and afternoon section, and there's approximately 120 multiple choice questions. There were 120 each section when I took the exam, which is a little time ago, but Chipwa can correct on that. But usually there are a morning session with multiple choice. There's 3 answers to each question. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, that's great, because, typically I take a multiple choice and there's 4 or 5 answers. But CFA is very smart. They've structured it so, like, the most common mistake that you would do when you're working on a question, that answer is going to be there. So it's not as simple as one would think. Is that right, Chipwa? It's 100 multiple choice, 120?
That is right. I think the questions were reduced. It should not be 120 per session anymore. It should be slightly less. Was 120 when I wrote, but I'm sure they have been reduced. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Maybe...
Our friend, I think Owusu said, yeah, it's 180. Thank you, sir.
And then just to add on to your answer, Samir, for Kujo, I hope I'm saying your name right. For level 1, each question and answer set go together. You're not going to get a story where you get a set of questions from the same story. So I hope that helps with the structure as well. And then Benedict is asking if we advise using only the curriculum for studying. I've done both for different levels. So for level 1, I used a combination of the material and study notes. And then for level 3 and level 2, I only used the material. Using only the material should not affect your grades in any way. You just probably need to make sure that you understand the way it's being said to you. And if you don't, maybe it's worth finding a place where it's explained in a way that you understand. Samir, any adds on that?
No, I think you covered that. I would, in terms of the curriculum.
Yeah, in terms of the curriculum outlined in the course books. Versus,
I have a very different take. I mean, I would say that, one of the most underrated study techniques is taking a lot of practice exams. Because if you remember, the curriculum books that you receive are really thick textbooks. And within those textbooks, there's end of chapter questions. But ultimately, for the level 1 exam, you're going to get 180 factoids and pieces of information that you're going to have to know and study and be able to get right. And if any of you are like me, you're probably reading some of those books and, you're falling asleep after, an hour or 2, and you're like, what am I really reading? So I have found, and it has worked for many people that I've advised, is to focus on taking practice exams. Take 3, 4, 5 practice exams for level 1, study the questions you get wrong, go and learn how to get those right, retake those exams 2 months later, 3 months later. I found that to be an effective strategy. I've also found that the study notes provided by a company like Schweizer, provided by others, those are oftentimes condensed, and they're not, instead of going through, 6, 7 books of this material, you're able to just look at this material. And that also is helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that, Samir. And maybe just a heads up on that as well, just to add on to that. I found it really helpful to play the games on the CFA preparation site, the one they give for going through the notes and studying. So simply because it helps you recall certain things quickly and you quickly realize where you are week. And I found that really helpful, like when I was sitting and not doing much and I didn't want to get into the heavy lifting of studying in depth, doing those games, playing those games, or listening to the audios, like Samir mentioned, which I'd created myself beforehand. That really helped with just staying refreshed and on top of things. And then another tip, which was really useful, which we have not mentioned today, was to use the last month closer to the exam day for a lot of tests, like Samir said. Do all the tests, if you can, all the tests, all the questions in the text, if you can. That will be really helpful. I think it saved me on a few marks. And also the ethics portion of the exam, it may seem intuitive, it really is not. They will be checking specific things and you will find you get caught out on certain answers which you thought should have been obvious, but there's a way they do the testing for ethics, which, you know, makes it tricky. So in the last month, it is advisable, and this I'm sharing advice I got, to go through the ethics section of the exam again just before the exam, especially for levels where it carries a higher weight. And then Adamte, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You mentioned that in Ghana, ACCA and CA are more marketable than CFA, and senior managers keep encouraging subordinates to take these programs instead of the CFA. And what is our take on it? Samir, would you like to go first on that?
Yeah, I would be the first to tell you that if you look at the number of CFA charter holders out there in the world, I mean, there's only been roughly 200,000, maybe 250,000 CFA charter holders ever. And I think there's something really powerful about going against the trend. Now, I also know that ACCA and CA are important exams and important designations, but it is really, really hard to get the CFA. And the CFA is only headed in one direction. It's only going to increase in value. It's only going to gain in prominence. And so I would take that with a grain of salt. I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive, but I would be an advocate of doing the CFA because it is a globally recognized exam that can give you a really strong foundation and truly differentiate you. I mean, oftentimes if your senior managers have taken the CFA and they've taken the CA and the ACCA, then you know, I'm sure their opinion has merit. I've oftentimes found, because I get these questions all the time, that many times people who are advising against the CFA are people who haven't taken it and haven't done it. I do think that the challenge is definitely real, in that those exams are more proliferated and are more commonplace. And so people recognize them and know them more, but that doesn't mean that they'll be more valuable long-term. And so if you're ambitious, I would make plans to try to pursue both. Like I pursued the CFP and the CFA. I found that they were complementary, but I know that the CFA exam is going to be increasingly of value as has been proven, because there's just a limited supply of CFA charter holders. Hope that helps. Chipwa, you can add anything else to that.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, just to share, little perspective on what you said. In Ghana, we have less than 60 charter holders, right? So that's a less than 65 charter holders in our community. Out of the 65, I'm sure about a third are probably working outside. So to be able to make it and join the community in Ghana, you really become part of the elite few, compared to ACCA, which probably will number in excess of 5,000, if I'm right. So yes, that probably will underscore why a manager would advocate for ACCA. He probably tried the CFA and couldn't make it. What is also unique about the CFA, I tell people, my boss, whom I respect so much, right, tried the CFA. He didn't make it. right? And he's become an advocate, of the, CFA, in Ghana. You can't work at Access in our investment team if you don't have, ACCA. Sorry, if you don't have a CFA. So it really depends, on the perspective of the manager. But anybody who has tried the CFA, even if he fails, see, the value of the CFA, and would definitely encourage, subordinate and staff, to probably, attempt. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. Nice
Thank
to hear
you.
your voice.
Thank you, Nana and Samir. Nothing to add there. I hope that answers your question. The next question we have is from Benedict, who's asking, what was your strategy for preparing for level 2? So in my CFA journey, I failed the level 2 exam twice. And then I got it on the 3rd try. And I think by this time, it was the 3rd time I got it. I think I just met Samir like a few months before that. So one thing that really helped turn things around for me the 3rd time I wrote the level 2, the recordings, which Samir mentioned earlier, they really do help. It helps to constantly be listening to especially the parts you don't understand and the parts that, take a little longer to sink in, because some of the information they test is so specific. Changing one word would change the meaning of everything and mean your answers are incorrect. So the recordings really do help. Another thing that he shared with me, which was a tip that really helped, was to practice writing out the formulas you need to use, even if you're not writing a test. So like just get a page and, write the name of the formula and write out the formula in full. This helps you with your speed. During the exam, you don't have to sit and wonder, what goes where and, which interest rate fits in this equation, which one doesn't, because it's now second nature and you've practiced it a lot. So what he advised I should do, which I did, which really helped, was every few weeks, go back to what you did maybe 2-3 weeks ago and try to see what you can recall by yourself in terms of formulas, in terms of definitions. Especially for level 2, the tricky part is remembering which items go with US GAAP and which items go with IFRS. And that is something you just really have to know, and writing out those formulas in detail really helps with identifying which parts of the question go with which methodology, especially because they mix it up in the question and you either know or you don't know. So I hope that answers your question, Benedict. And then Jerry is asking which models are key for passing level 2. I'm not sure what you mean by models, Jerry. Could you please explain that?
I think I can just jump in on both of those questions as well. I think Jerry might mean like which topics. I think Jerry, they give you a breakdown. If you just Google like the level 2 curriculum breakdown, if I recall correctly, I know that financial statement analysis and accounting was a big part of it. I chose to focus on, hey, if you look at some of the big topic sections, know them really well because they're going to be covered. Equity investments, just to comment on level 2. Level 2 is kind of like the Wednesday, the hump of the CFA program. Once you get through that, you kind of feel like you see light. Doesn't mean that level 3 is easy by any means. It's not. But I think the thing to remember about level 2 is that some of the strategies that I've advised people versus studying in a traditional way. So I'm an even bigger advocate for level 2 of taking tons of practice exams, because it is an intense, it is a stressful exam when you have 10 different cases, you got 6 different questions on each, you got to read 3, 4, 5 pages of a case, then you got to go and answer the questions associated with it. And it is really stressful from an energy standpoint on your brain. And of course, there can be a lot of anxiety. So I think my strategy for level 2 was taking practice exams much earlier than people would. So take them in month 1, month 2, month 3, keep taking exams and mix up your studying, because that's going to get you comfortable with the exams. There's also only so much material. So I got my hands on, let's just say 10 different practice exams. And I studied them and learned them so well that when it came time to take the test, I remember getting very similar questions, not because I had the questions in advance, but because there's only so many ways that they can ask things. I think another point, as Chipwa mentioned, is creating audio recordings of the material you don't know, so that you can find another way to really listen it and engrave it. I've also advised people, and I did this, is, writing out all the different formulas on a sheet of paper. What is the name of the formula? Maybe if let's just say there's 50 of them, 100 of them in a piece of information. Then on another sheet of paper, writing out. So let's just say you had residual income formula on your first sheet, number 1. On the other sheet, you'd put number 1, you'd put the actual formula. And then what I would do is every morning, I would take that first sheet that named all the formulas and key pieces of information. I take a blank piece of paper and I try to remember each of them and write them out. And then I'd compare that to sheet number 2. And if you do that every day, once or twice a day, you're going to be pretty good on all the formulas and all the things to memorize. And that will save you kind of stress. That will also give you specific questions that you end up learning and answering. So I hope that is helpful. I think our esteemed leader, Nana, I think you are going to jump in.
Samir, so yes, my name is Nana. We are Phil, and I'm the president of the local society. I just want to address the prep, provider, issue, by citing an example. So myself, I went through the CFA, without any prep provider. What was my background? I had a degree in finance and a master's in finance. I sailed through level 1, level 2 smoothly. Level 3, I got it on my 5th attempt. And I'm sure if I had attended, classes with a prep provider, I may have blamed the prep provider, for my inability to make, the exams, on time. And I think, my story is the same, for our secretary Boache, who also tried level 3, on multiple attempts without going through, the prep provider. Again, if he had, he may have blamed, the prep provider. Having said that, let me mention, 2, guys I know. Thomas did maths in tech and did his master's, in Oxford, went through, the prep provider in Ghana and made, the CFA on both the 3 levels on single attempt. I think level 2, level 3, he may have, tried, twice or so. Carl, who I work with, at Access, probably, went through, the prep, provider, and made, the exams on small, attempts, right? I know, of one guy who had no background in finance, our previous, head of advocacy committee, who works as chief investment officer at IC. He did, psychology, didn't go through any prep provider, got the CFA, all the 3 levels on first attempt. All I'm saying is, it boils down to you. Samir, made that, very, clearly. Even if, you are attending, classes and you think, just by virtue of going through, this class, you are not going to put in the minimum 300, hours, you will fail. You will fail. So, let's put, this prep provider, thing into perspective. I don't think, benchmark is that terrible. Like I mentioned, I know people who went through, benchmark and made, the exams on the first attempt. There are multiple people, I could recount. And guess what? It's the same, charter holders, who, support, benchmark in providing, the prep to candidates. So it boils down really to you putting in the time. You've got to put in the time. I knew for all the 4 attempts, I tried at level 3 that I was going to fail. because I didn't put in, work. When I was doing level 1, level 2, I was a student. I had all the time in the world to study. Immediately, I tried a level 3. I've started working. Marriage came in, children came in. I didn't put in the work. But on my 5th attempt, after actually, going on a 2-year sabbatical break, after failing the 4th time, guess what? I was waking up every day, 3 a.m. I study, for 2.5 hours before, I get to work. And I made it. I knew I was going to pass, and I passed. So it boils down to you. If you don't put in, the work, if you don't put in the time, trust me, you can be a professor of finance and you would fail. If you put in the work, you may not have a finance, background, and trust me, you would pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. Yeah, there's no kind of secret to being able to get through the exams other than you got to put in a lot of work and you got to continuously work to study more efficiently and effectively. I think that candidates today are at an advantage even to when you were going through the program, and that there is a society, there's more people here, there's more people that are interested in it, and you were certainly a crusader in that regard. Kujo, in terms of finding practice exams, I know that CFA Institute actually puts out and releases past exams. I know you oftentimes can go on analyst notes and other forums. If you Google, the level and you look for practice exams, many times you can find them. I know you can also buy used practice exam books or the PDFs that you can print from eBay, from Amazon. Oftentimes there's places there where you can get them. Mine might be a little bit out of date if I could ever find them, but I remember you're not going to be, getting an exam where someone hands you the textbook. You're going to be getting the exam. We know the format. So my emphasis is become very familiar with taking those exams and the content therein.
Thank you, Samir. We don't seem to have any more questions coming in. Afriya, over to you.
Great. Thank you, CFA Society. Donna, it was a pleasure being here today. We want everyone here to know that your friends Chipwa and Samir are here to help you. I think I'm going to join that level 1 study group and know that we're here to provide you advice and guidance. And when you think about if there are specific questions, you're looking for inspiration, you can reach out to us. And if you're interested in potentially being in a place where you can apply some of the things you learn in the curriculum and you're looking for exciting opportunities, we're always looking for bright young people. We have team members in, I think, 7-8 different countries in Africa, none in Ghana. And so our goal in being here was to establish relationships and be a real part of the society over the long term.
Thank you, Samir. We just got another question come in. I'm only seeing it now. It came in a different section. It says, in case of illness and a candidate having enough evidence, will they still have to pay $250 to reschedule their exams? Am I audible, Samir?
Yes, I don't know the answer to that question.
All right.
About the registration. So I wasn't sure of that answer. I think that's one for the Institute or Society.
Okay, I think so. I'm not sure of the answer as well. But it's worth asking directly to CFA Institute. Clement, I hope that helps. They do respond to the helpline emails pretty quickly. So I'm sure if you spoke with them, you would get the appropriate response.
To add to that, you can alternatively send us an email with your request. We'll follow up on that for you.
Thank you. Afria, over to you.
Okay, so we would invite the society president to close today's session. Nana, over to you.
All right, thank you, very much. So, Escal, on behalf, of the Board of Directors and the Education Committee, we would want to thank, Girl Power Talk, Samir and Chipwa, for taking time to engage our candidates and for sharing, your experience and expertise with us. Our gratitude also goes to the Education Committee of the local society and our executive administrator, for putting this together. Now, what I would want to say is we have an active society that supports our candidates, throughout their CFA journey. We really, want to make this society, very relevant in our local, community. And therefore, if you have any concerns, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Ifriye has shared the contact details on the chat, room for this meeting. So if you have any concern, please reach out. And then we also have WhatsApp group for the various, levels, candidates writing these exams. It is important, you join, you would find, candidates, who are probably studying for the same level. You can form study group and then help, yourself, along the way. It was very helpful, to me in my CFA journey. Like I mentioned, when I was writing level 1, 2, I was in school. And I remember, meeting, my colleagues and friends every weekend to discuss and to solve a question. And that was helpful experience. I didn't get that opportunity in my level 3, and hence, the reason I probably, suffered, that much. So thank you once again, Samir, Chipwa, for your time. And we would want to, do this as many times as we can, to ensure we are able to increase our candidate, pass rate. Thank you, and do have a great, day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Nana and Afri. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Looking forward to supporting all of you in the most meaningful way possible.
I echo Samir's sentiments. Thank you, everyone, for having us. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Right.